some people were organizing a Kalenjin Night in Moi University. And so Lungai had written an article, Kalenjin Night, do we need it? That was the title of the article. And some people had considered it abusive, insightful, radical. There were so many other cases. Just before I'd become chairman, I remember people had been suspended, expelled, including the current Senator wa Kericho, Aaron Cheriot. He'd been among them. We'd organized a party to welcome them back as heroes. That demonstration had even led to death of a student. I remember Thomas Kaudo telling the provincial boss of police that time, is it? Provincial police of, the boss of police in the province, telling him, our fear is not even fear itself.
Mwamburi, after being elected the chairperson of Moi University Students' Organizations, what was the first thing you did in ensuring that you achieve your mandate to the students?
Results were declared on a Saturday. We had voted on Friday. Results declared on a Saturday. Mwamburi Mwang'ombe declared winner. Chairman Okeri Orina declared winner, Secretary General. We were treated as twins in that contest. So I am of the opinion that those who voted for Mwamburi Mwang'ombe also voted for Okeri Orina. We believed in the same things, same ideology. By midday that day, the Vice Chancellor was in campus, Professor Richard Mibei. And it instructed the campus security to look for the chairman. I was found, I think, around Hostel A, behind Hostel A towards the falls. I think I must have been admiring the trees behind that hostel, looking down the ravine to the falls, the river which is behind Moi University.
Yeah.
I sat before the Vice Chancellor and he told me, you are now an administrator. You occupy a very interesting position. Things will not move in this university if you say no. You will sit in council as the sacrosanct voice of students. Whatever you say stands. Now, chairman, let's administer. I remember how Professor Mibei narrated to me his days in Taita Hills when he was doing his research for, I think, mycology or microbiology. No, Professor Mibei is a renowned scholar along those lines of microbiology, micro things. And he had done his research in Ngangao Forest, Taita Hills. So he told me, chairman, what do you consider urgent? At that point, I had only one burning item upon which I had campaigned. Eric Lungai had been suspended indefinitely for writing an article. I even remember the title of that article. It was Kalenjin Night. Some people were organizing a Kalenjin Night in Moi University. And so Lungai had written an article, Kalenjin Night, do we need it? That was the title of the article. And some people had considered it abusive, insightful, radical, and such other nasty adjectives to it. And so Lungai had been suspended indefinitely. Some beautiful way of expelling somebody, suspended indefinitely. When does the indefiniteness end? We don't know. So I told, okay. I had campaigned and people had asked me, what if you win? What will happen to your classmate and friend, Eric Lungai? I said, Lungai must come back. They would rather kill me. So there I was seated before the Vice Chancellor. The Vice Chancellor, very amiable, tells me, I'm told that students have this time elected Chairman and Secretary General, messiahs, defenders of their rights, in writing and in talking. So tell me, Chairman, we have to cross this bridge together. What do? I told him, Eric Lungai should be in campus now. Prof looked at me and said, Do you know he committed a crime? I told Professor Mibe, you've been misadvised. Did you read the article?
But did he read it?
That's the expulsion of Eric Lungai is something which should be revisited, not for justice, but for conversation's sake. That article had elicited very interesting discourse in campus. Professors of literature and linguistics and communication had even given their opinion about that article. Stylistic analysis, word by word breakdown. What does the article mean? I even remember Dr. Busolo Wegesa, one of my favorite lecturers when I studied literature and linguistics at Moi University. I remember a number of them, of course, Busolo teaching me classical literary theory and Greek mythology in literary analysis. I remember Dr. Roslyn Shigali. No, Dr. Shigali. What was her English name? Dr. Shigali, Dr. Roslyn Shigali, I guess, teaching me stylistics. There was Dr. Basil Okongo, and of course there is Professor Simatei, Professor Amuka, who is more than family, teaching us how to unlock meanings in things. These people had made a case to the university against the expulsion of their students. This is purely creative writing on display. There's nothing insightful. What anarchy, what demonstration has this article caused anyway? Because it has been published and broadcasted. What anarchy has it caused? So Professor Mibei had been given all these digests. Dr. Busolo had written, I think, a 4 or 5 page essay analyzing that article in favor of Lungai. But all this fell on deaf ears, and the Vice Chancellor was advised to suspend Lungai. And so there I was telling Professor Mibei, let him come back. My life will be so impossible in this university without Eric Lungai. I will walk in this campus characterless. People will ask me, how do you ride roughshod on the sweetness of power and your classmate lies in ruin back in the village in Vihiga? Uko Vihiga ndo kwa kina Lungai. So we had an exchange with Professor Mibei, telling me his dimensions about student discipline and so forth, telling him mine about students and, for that matter, students of literature and writing. And so he picked his phone and called, that time, the chief academic officer, Professor Ole Karei, the late now. Told him, Professor Ole Karei, will you be in my office? I don't know why Professor Ole Karei was around that time. So Professor Ole Karei came. Professor Mibei, the Vice Chancellor, told him, the chairman here insists that the student we sent home last week, I think 2, 3, 4, last month, I think it was last month, some weeks ago, should come back now before exams. Can you run an advert on the dailies calling all students? Can you attach Lungai's case, Eric Lungai's case, to students who are due to appear for disciplinary hearing? So you see, Lungai had just been suspended, and there were so many cases on queue to appear before the Senate Disciplinary Committee. And Lungai was not one of them, having been recently suspended, in my opinion, expelled. And so Lungai's name was put among those who will be called by the advert on Standard. I even remember Professor Ole Karei calling the Standard Media Group that time, calling students to, to the disciplinary hearings of the University Senate. And so that's how Lungai was called back.
Now Lungai has been called for the disciplinary committee.
Yeah.
How did it go?
Eric Lungai, Eric Amukoe Lungai, we used to call him the writer. The writer stuck to his guns. Mwamburi Mwang'ombe and Okeri Orina on the other side shivering. Yes, they had advocated his calling back. Here he is. The university is finding a procedural way of reinstating him. But Eric Lungai is asking this panel, can you point out the mistakes with the article I wrote? What were the mistakes? Eric Lungai is a brother, is a friend. And I know how sacred his opinions are. He sieved every sentence that went into that article. His heart was in every line, as the Commodores sing. Eric Lungai's heart was in every line of that article. And here he is being told to dismantle the logic of that article. Eric Lungai stuck to his guns. I remember the professors wondering. But there I was, having, conversed the vice chancellor that Eric Lungai is synonymous to my stay in power as a student's chairman. So Eric Lungai was reinstated. But Eric Lungai reminds me of one of the things I consider my achievements as a student leader, together with Okeri Orina, when we sat in the University Senate Disciplinary Committee. We always insisted that this is not a court of law where you must prove everything beyond reasonable doubt. This is a family gathering whose intention is to help students mend their ways and make their parents and society proud by graduating. Our intention here is not to slaughter and kill ambitions. Have we ruled out the possibility of redress? Have we eliminated possibilities that this errant can be called back to order? And so every time the Senate Disciplinary Committee would ask of Okeri Orina's opinion or Mwamburi Mwang'ombe's opinion, they knew that I was against suspension of students. I don't know who was ever expelled during my time. Even the chairman of students who had been there before me, Dominic Karega, had a disciplinary case after adjourning his time as chairman. I think they had waited until he had lost power. He had had a problem with the university, accommodation, hostels, management, and so forth. And one Mrs. Tanui had brought a case against him in Senate. I even remember the chairman sat there to face the disciplinary committee, Dominic Karega.
So it was a retaliation case?
To me, it was a retaliation, witch hunt of sorts. And I remember the chairman speaking very strongly against that. Even the chairman of the Engineering Students Association, that time called TSA, Technology Students Association, he was called James Utu, had also faced the disciplinary committee for having led students to discord and such like things. So I will just sit there and tell them, professors, I see this is my fate. I'm also an eloquent, adamant student leader who believes in the sanctity of his constituency. This is what you'll do to me when I quit student leadership. But let's investigate the merits. Is it worth it? And so during my time, I don't even remember if there was ever a student. None was expelled. That one I'm sure during my time. There were so many other cases. Just before I'd become chairman, I remember people had been suspended, expelled, including the current Senator wa Kericho, Aaron Cheriot. He'd been among them. We'd organized a party to welcome them back as heroes. That demonstration had even led to death of a student. We had marched to Cheptiret Highway. I remember Thomas Kaudo telling the provincial boss of police that time, is it? Provincial police of the boss of police in the province. Telling him, our fear is not even fear itself. We used to call Thomas Kaudo TK. TK was one of my, the story of Mwamburi in student leadership must start with Thomas Kaudo, Kizia Philbert, and the never sleeping Nyamuya Omari, always thinking and reminding me the creed to what I've sown. Clifford Ogutu giving the brotherly, stern, firm opinion filled with love. Korir, Silas Korir, who had at that time gone against his tribe, Kalenjin tribe, had a preferred candidate. But Korir had been one of the few who had dared support me against the grain. So Thomas Kaudo at the demonstration telling the police boss, our fear is not even fear itself. Our fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. So that whole fiasco had led to suspension, expulsions, and such like things. That time I had just survived by a whisker. I know they had prioritized those who had to go. I was not in the first, I don't know, 36 or 16. I was not among them.
Were you vocal at that time?
I was very vocal, quite vocal, but young. You know, I was just a first year or second year at that time. But known on the walls. I bled, you know, what would I call it? Potent ink. My ink was, I think, daring. So I was a bit known, but they had decided to start with a certain crop. It was just by chance I survived that suspension. And all these things added up to, you know, the myth of Mwamburi Mwang'ombe. Who is this person? Very beautiful things he writes, very interesting arguments he brings forth. So when Mwamburi Mwang'ombe came to the fore of campus politics, everybody wanted to know the enigma. And some people even considered me disrespectful at how I entered politics with ease and won without money, without posters, very few posters. There was even a volunteer who had done a big banner, a white cloth, which had Mwamburi Mwang'ombe for chairman. And it used to be displayed strategically on the academic highway from School of Human Resource to administration block. Mwamburi Mwang'ombe. And I remember the beautiful clarion call down there, the slogan, which I had, of course, adopted from Marcus Garvey, "Up ye mighty people," and it became a song, "Up ye mighty people, up ye mighty people, Mwamburi Mwang'ombe." People coined interesting stories and tales about me. I became a fable. Mwamburi Mwang'ombe was fabled that time. Yeah, so those are some of the things I remember, plus a number much more.
During your reign, did you have any strikes that you really handled or led?
Yeah, the biggest challenge I was dealing with that time was the hackman, the infamous Peter Mashoka. I had rallied the entire university against the university administration to some sort of an in-house, an in-campus demonstration to which we sang our chants of displeasure to the university administration. And the university had been worried that the university would run berserk. And that entire moment rested on the shoulders of two people. Mwamburi Mwang'ombe, Okeri Orina. Mwamburi Mwang'ombe, Okeri Orina. What would be their adjoining statements to students? Do we march to ban, or what do we do? And I've said we had handled it philosophically, like some sort of poetry. I had unleashed a reprimand against the university administration, against the chief academic officer, the chief administrative officer, the DVCs. That time the DVC in charge of research and planning, was it research and planning? I think so. Planning and development. Professor Gudu, who is currently the vice chancellor of Rongo University, had called us early in the morning trying to, manage the situation. That intelligent scientist had really tried in vain, because I told him, students are summoned to gather. There's no coming back. All you need to do is to tell us how we are going to assure them there'll be safety henceforth. There was another demonstration around fairs to town and such like things. There were a number, but I think somehow I maneuvered, somehow I survived because of those witty, artistic attributes of how I mediated my case to comrades.
During your time and the times of those who came after you, there's a position of the vice chair. Mostly it was reserved for ladies, and some people usually said that that position was just for flower girls. What was really the responsibilities of the of the vice chairperson?
Tradition can be foolish. Tradition can be petty. It is true. It had been thought a female's position. And during my time, it was occupied by a female. But I remember there were daring comrades, like my friend Eliud Kipto, who is pursuing politics currently in Elgeyo Marakwet. I think up to the last election, he was supposed to contest for Senate. I think there was a conversation between him and Senator Murkomen. I really don't know, but Eliud Kipto was, as far as I'm concerned, last election trying to be senator of Elgeyo Marakwet County. He had tried to become vice chair of Moi University Students Organization during my time. And there was another person called Gituku. It is true the position was silently reserved for ladies, but I did not consider it mundane, redundant, obsolete. I considered the position very crucial because this person deputized the chairperson. And if the chairperson was creative and accommodative, even tolerant, there was always work for the vice chair. Because the vice chair was some sort of welfare, which was quite crucial for students that time. The well-being of students. And therefore, the vice chair would arbitrate or midwife salvation to comrades. Only that maybe the position of Secretary General is fabled the world over in trade unions, in organizations. The position of Secretary General is really known, and of course the chairman are really known. That's what may make some positions seem redundant, but they were not. Even snails have their role in the ecosystem. Yeah, if we eliminate them, we die.
There was this one for the one that deals with the kitchens.
The director or the secretary of catering.
Exactly.
Catering director or catering secretary.
There was
health secretary, health.
Traditionally, why was it that it was for ladies? And if you find a gentleman trying to vie, he would be decampaigned by the fact that he's vying for a lady's position. I'm a bit ignorant there. But I'm sure the position of vice chair was not reserved for any gender. In fact, I believe leadership is genderless. You cannot attach gender to leadership. You're either a leader or not, whether male or female. Yeah.
The position of director of catering or secretary of catering in Moi University that time, I'm not very aware. I suspect the position of director of health or secretary of health was reserved for ladies. I think it was some sort of attempt at affirmative action. But I would definitely stand for abolishing gender in leadership. Let leaders be, despite their gender. Because you, as I've said, you stand as a high priest before the Holy of Holies in political parlance. Let the best represent. Is the best resident in a certain gender? No. Is the best resident in a certain tribe? No. Is the best resident in a certain age, creed, color? No. Let the best govern. That's what I think.